Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. According to spoilers for the upcoming 2 weeks of The Young and the Restless, August 11th to 22nd, Claire Newman will seek retribution while someone makes a unique wedding request. Here's what YNR fans may anticipate, since Nick Newman will also lose it on Billy Abbott. Lily Winter's updates will startle Holden Novak during the week of August 11th to 15th. Holden will be shocked when Lily confesses that Damian Kane did not return from Nice alive. Regarding Mariah Copeland, her outburst will surprise Sharon Newman. Despite the fact that Mariah will ostensibly be attending therapy, she will not be willing to be honest with Sharon and will instead become angry with her. When Claire sees Audra Charles and Kyle Abbott sharing a kiss at Society, her retaliation ought to be imminent. Claire will take charge of the situation and make a daring move. We'll see if Nate Hastings learns about Audra's stolen kisses and the scheme to destroy Claire's relationship. Claire could respond by telling Nate about Audra's inappropriate behavior. Kyle, on the other hand, will accuse Audra of having that lip lock and plead with Claire that he is loyal to her. Now that all these worries are starting to surface, how much more can Claire tolerate? Victor will concentrate on Kane retribution, according to other YNR spoilers. It appears that Kane will reject Victor by declining to support his coalition against the Abbotts and their family company. Given that Jack is going to get a surprise invitation, Kane might instead look for Jack as an ally. He'll lose it on Billy in a heated argument with Nick. Nick might believe that rather than working with Kane, Billy should be devoted to the people he loves. Billy will act as though he supports Kane's objectives, but in reality, he will be plotting with Jack to prevent him from causing trouble at Jabot. He will rely on Nick to be a key player in the Newmans' battle against Kane now that he is back with Victor. That information might make Sharon uneasy, since she might see Nick's darker side emerge. Since Christine Blair will require a favor, there should then be a request pertaining to the wedding. We'll check to see if Christine needs a matron of honor or at least a wedding planner after Lauren Fenmore Baldwin receives a request of any kind. Danny Romalotti might be able to offer some guidance, as Daniel Romalotti Jr. will also be honest with Danny about his developing love for Tessa Porter. Kane will make another promise to Lily and hope that their relationship can resume. In an effort to learn more about Kane's actual motivations, Lily will give him the impression that it is feasible. The week of August 18th to 22nd is when Lily's manipulation scheme might go awry. Lily's feelings for Kane may get more complex the longer this continues. Along the road, there will also be more Newman planning. Victor had better be prepared for everything, since he won't be playing around when it comes to Kane retribution. He might do all in his power to show Claire how committed he is to her once he's back with Kyle, but will it be enough? Now that his affections for Tessa are growing, Daniel might perhaps go too far, so we'll see how she reacts to any audacious actions he does. Stay tuned for some surprises over the coming 2 weeks, according to spoilers for The Young and the Restless. Hours had passed while Claire sat by herself in her apartment, gazing out the window while rain splattered in sharp lines on the glass. In the same pattern she had been maintaining since the call that morning, her fingers pounded impatiently on the edge of the coffee table. This was distinct from her usual tendency to linger on the past. It was a personal matter. Like a movie she couldn't stop, every recollection of the smirks, the hushed remarks, and the obvious betrayals replayed itself in her head. She had been waiting for months, pretending to be innocent, and assuring everyone that she had moved on. Actually, she had been cataloging every little detail, names, dates, and occurrences. The first part of her strategy was underway now. Wrapped in gold foil and secured with a satin ribbon, the invitation she had just sent out was more than a formality, it was a weapon. The focal point of the entire event was her alleged wedding. She had persuaded nearly everyone that she had discovered the ideal man, a charming, affluent investor who appeared to revere the ground she walked on. He was actually a pawn, a college acquaintance who was prepared to cooperate because he owed her a lot of favors. Love was not the theme of the wedding. It had nothing to do with dedication. It has to do with control. She desired for everyone who had betrayed her to stand there and watch her shine, to grin glumly as she struck the ideal blow. She was aware that her request was out of the ordinary, but that was the point. Her voice was as sweet as candy, and she had called Nick Newman personally to tell him that she wanted Billy Abbott to be her wedding coordinator. She had loved Nick's sudden intake of breath. She was fully aware of the pandemonium that would result. Claire was aware that Nick had been losing his anger a lot lately. Every time she saw him at Crimson Lights or Society, she could feel the stress rising in him. She was also aware of his past relationship with Billy, how the two men had been pals and foes for years, pushing each other's buttons until something broke. She wasn't merely setting a trap when she asked Billy to be a part of her wedding, she was lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. As she pretended not to notice Nick's jaw tightening or his refusal to look her in the eyes after she dropped the bombshell, it was lovely to watch from the sidelines. She only grinned, informed him that it was just a special request, and turned to go. Later that evening, when Nick approached Billy, he wasn't sure what to think of it. Nick rushed in like a man on a mission while he was drinking whiskey and leaned against the bar at the Grand Phoenix. "You're not doing it," Nick stated bluntly. There was no mistaking the rage bubbling beneath the surface of his quiet voice. Always able to deflect with a chuckle, Billy simply lifted his drink and inquired, "What exactly are you doing?" Nick seemed much more irate after that. "The wedding of Claire," Nick spit out. Billy laughed then, not because he thought it was funny, but because he could see Nick was only a few seconds away from losing it. "She wants you involved, and I'm telling you, it's not happening." Billy answered, "I believe Claire should decide that, not you. Plus, I'm really good at making plans that people remember." From there, the discussion swiftly became heated. Nick accused Billy of playing games when there were more important matters at hand and of using the wedding as a means of getting under his skin. Billy retorted that Nick was exaggerating and that perhaps he ought to consider the reasons behind his intense concern. The tension was heavy, the sort that made everyone in the room pay attention. They were soon standing toe-to-toe, both guys unwilling to back down, as Nick's voice rose sharp enough to pierce through the background noise. Before things became physical, Abby had to intervene and shove Nick back with her hands on his chest. Billy simply smiled and threw back the remainder of his drink before strolling out as if he hadn't just set a fire in the foyer. Within an hour, Claire naturally learned about the explosion. The moment Nick left, she received a call from a friend who worked at the hotel's front desk. She smiled for the first time in weeks when she saw the news. It was going just how she had envisioned. Even though the wedding was still a month away, she had everyone yelling at one another like wolves over the same kill. Even if someone had doubted her intentions, they couldn't halt the momentum because she had planned her retaliation so meticulously. She wasn't finished yet, either. Her next step was to ensure that some guests were seated quite close to one another, those who had not spoken for years, people who had unresolved business, and people who were incapable of maintaining composure throughout a reception supper. She pretended to be unaware about the altercation with Billy when she eventually saw Nick again in person. "Oh, did I make things tense?" Her eyes were wide as she asked naively. "I simply believed Billy could contribute to making the day special." Nick was not duped, but he also understood that criticizing her directly would only give the impression that he was crazy. "He's so creative." Even yet, she simply smiled and leaned in slightly as he told her, "You're playing with fire, Claire." His voice was full of frustration. She left him to ruminate in his own thoughts after saying, "That's the fun part, Nick." Everyone on the guest list was tense by the time the wedding day finally arrived. Although rumors regarding Claire's genuine intentions had circulated, nobody was certain of her plans. Picture-perfect flowers, a gorgeous gown, and music so gentle and lovely it seemed like it belonged in a movie made the ceremony itself ideal. Beneath the beauty, however, was a stream of anxiety so intense that it was almost palpable. Sitting rigidly in the second row, Nick's gaze strayed to Billy, who was rushing about making last-minute decor changes. The air seemed to crackle each time their eyes locked. Claire captured those glances and preserved them as if they were priceless. Her genuine moment was reserved for the reception. Claire took the microphone as the music slowed and the audience's focus shifted to the stage. Her voice was friendly and warm, much like the radiant bride. She hailed her husband, thanked everyone for attending, and then dropped the first of many small bombs. She discussed the value of confronting the past head-on and forgiveness. She identified specific visitors by name, bringing to mind instances that seemed innocent at the time but had harsh edges for those who were aware of the reality. She praised others for moving on even though she knew they hadn't. As she toasted to new beginnings, she made it obvious that she was speaking directly to Nick and Billy by fixing them with her gaze. Nick was already irritable, but he really lost it when Billy leaned over to say something quietly about how Claire truly knew how to keep a crowd entertained. Every head in the room turned as he stood up so suddenly that his chair fell backward. "Do you find this amusing?" His voice reverberated off the walls as he yelled. Slowly, Billy got up, his own smile fading. He said, "I think you need to calm down," but his tone was unmistakably challenging. The two men were nose to nose again in a matter of seconds, this time in front of dozens of visitors who were silently appalled. Claire watched it all unfold as if it were the big reveal she had been anticipating, standing off to the side with her champagne glass halfway to her lips. It was, in a sense. Every action had been planned, and every component had been positioned precisely where it should be. She could now see the cracks she had worked so hard to build splintering bigger and wider as Nick lost it in front of everyone and Billy refused to back down. The nice part about it was that nobody could prove she had done anything. Standing there in white as the bride, she appeared as if she couldn't comprehend why her special day had turned into a chaotic one. The harm was already done when security intervened and the two men were separated. Everyone was talking about Claire, taking sides, and muttering to each other. She feigned distress and apologized to the audience for the unexpected drama, but on the inside, she was relishing every moment. After then, the previously exuberant atmosphere was muted by the residual tension, and the reception limped on. Claire didn't mind. She actually liked it that way. An ideal day was unmemorable. This one? There would be years of discussion on this one. Claire later sneaked away to a peaceful area of the club as the evening wore on and the final patrons began to leave. She felt a profound, contented calm descend upon her as she gazed out over the deserted dance floor, the abandoned bouquets, and the discarded champagne flutes. She had aimed to create a statement, and she had achieved more than she could have imagined. The repercussions of Nick and Billy's feud would extend much beyond this one night and were now widely known. At least this part of her retaliation was finished. Already planning her next move, she grinned to herself. Betrayal, emotional manipulation, and the effects of unsolved grudges within a family dynamic are all compellingly explored in the plot of Claire's Revenge, Special Wedding Request. Nick loses it on Billy. This storyline explores the intricacies of personal grudges, the brittleness of interpersonal bonds, and the violent outbursts that occur when long-simmering tensions suddenly blow up. The main conflict centers on Nick's tense encounter with Billy, Claire's planned retaliation, and the symbolic significance of a wedding proposal, all of which act as catalysts for dramatic change. Claire's desire for vengeance lies at the core of this plot and serves as a motivating factor that influences how the characters interact with one another. Because they appeal to our basic emotions of rage, betrayal, and the need for justice, revenge stories are a mainstay of dramatic storytelling. Claire's behavior points to a deep-seated animosity that may have its roots in perceived injustices or betrayals in the past. Her choice to use a particular wedding request as a means of retaliation demonstrates a strategic mind that is aware of the symbolic significance of ceremonies. Weddings are the ideal setting for subversion because they are typically occasions of joy and unity. Claire weaponizes the event by making a request that interrupts the celebration, transforming what ought to be a happy get-together into a venue for her retaliation. This decision emphasizes the idea of appearances versus reality. The wedding, which presents a happy front, ends up serving as the setting for unresolved tension. Awareness. The psychological warfare at work requires an awareness of the specifics of the particular wedding request. The request is the catalyst for Nick's rage, whether it takes the form of a public humiliation, an unexpected disclosure, or a demand that puts Billy in an impossible situation. Although there are several possible interpretations due to the request's vagueness, its influence cannot be denied. Billy is forced into a defensive position, revealing his weaknesses and prior errors. Claire sees this as an opportunity to establish authority as well as to punish Billy. Claire's tactic shows that she can control the situation to her benefit, and revenge is frequently as much about regaining control as it is about punishing someone. This story arc culminates with Nick's furious response to Billy, when repressed feelings at last surface. Unresolved conflict and accumulated tension can be used as a lens through which to examine Nick's outburst. Subtle indications of Nick's mounting annoyance are probably there throughout the narrative. Perhaps Billy's actions have consistently let him down, or perhaps Nick has been compelled to control his rage in order to maintain family peace. Any pretense of civility is shattered by the wedding request, which serves as the last straw. Nick's emotional commitment in the conflict is revealed by his loss of control, which makes it noteworthy. He might react to Billy's current behavior as well as to a history of perceived slights, betrayals, or rivalries. Billy's contribution to this conflict is just as significant. He might be a worthy target of Nick's wrath or an unintentional victim of Claire's retaliation, depending on how he is portrayed. Nick's reaction could be interpreted as a long overdue realization if Billy has a history of manipulative or self-centered behavior. On the other hand, if Billy is truly sorry or does not realize how much harm he has caused, the encounter turns into a catastrophic miscommunication. The relationship between Nick and Billy touches on more general themes of forgiveness, loyalty, and fraternity. Competition and unresolved childhood tensions are common in sibling relationships, and this plotline dramatically intensifies those aspects. There will be long-term effects from Nick's outburst. Relationships are irrevocably damaged by public altercations, particularly during important occasions like weddings. The dysfunction of the family is unwittingly witnessed by the other visitors, and the spectacle may compel other characters to choose a side. Several character arcs might change at this point. Claire might succeed in her mission to undermine Billy, but at what price? Nick may feel regret or become even more alone as a result of his outburst. Billy might either look for atonement or become even more protective, depending on how resilient he is. Instead of serving as a unifying event, the wedding causes rifts within the family that may not heal for years, if at all. The destructive force of retaliation and the cyclical nature of warfare are explored thematically in this plot. Although Claire's acts are short-term rewarding, they probably feed a vicious cycle of reprisals. Rather of bringing closure, revenge frequently makes wounds worse. A custom intended to honor love and fresh starts, the wedding gets perverted into a venue for old grievances. This irony emphasizes how happiness in the present can be tainted by past traumas. Nick's outburst is a sign of this poison. His incapacity to deal with his complaints in a constructive manner causes a blowout that harms all parties. The part that gender plays in this conflict is examined from a different angle. Claire's retaliation is particularly calculated, using social norms, like the sanctity of a wedding, to further her objectives. Nick's verbal or physical outburst, on the other hand, can be more blunt and forceful. The disparity between their strategies may be a reflection of social conventions regarding the ways in which men and women exhibit their anger. Men are socially conditioned to engage in overt acts of aggression, whereas women typically choose indirect forms of vengeance. By implying that both characters are, in their own ways, bound by gendered norms, this dichotomy deepens the story. Another important factor in escalating the drama is the wedding's location. Family conflicts can arise during weddings, which are emotionally charged occasions. Underlying conflicts might become unavoidable due to the strain to maintain a flawless facade. By selecting this location, the story makes the most of the confrontation. What ought to be a happy day turns into one of mayhem, emphasizing the notion that unresolved problems will always come up again, no matter how far they are buried. In summary, Claire's Revenge, Special Wedding Request, Nick Loses It on Billy is a compelling story that explores the explosive power of suppressed emotions, the repercussions of seeking revenge, and the frailty of familial ties. The dramatic encounter between Nick and Billy is built up by Claire's well-planned retaliation, which exposes the long-simmering tensions. Ironically, the wedding, a sign of solidarity, becomes the site of division, highlighting the devastation caused by unresolved conflict. Future storylines will probably be affected by the consequences from this encounter as characters struggle with treachery, guilt, and the challenging road to forgiveness, if reconciliation is even possible. This storyline is a potent reminder of the price of seeking revenge and the necessity of resolving complaints before they do irreparable harm.